Yeah, so I'm gonna promote something real fast. A couple of months ago, Chad and I founded a company called Pay Now, so you'll be hearing more about that. There's nothing more to say right now. Hey, I wanted to mention, you've been talking about domains as an asset class for 20 years. But you think what Drew's doing over at Raleigh Road is that it's a step in the right direction, but is there a big market for it? Because I'm going to ask Drew some questions about this aftermarket on Raleigh Road.
A couple steps, but one, it's great, anybody doing stuff that's in our industry, right, raising all boats, get more attention to our asset class, that's a good thing. Kind of co-opetition. What I forgot to address is what we're able to do now is we pledge 2% to impact programs. Waterschool.com with Richard Lau. Now you can see our pledge into an impact program. You can't see that with Raleigh Road's cap table because I have no idea. I have no idea what they're doing with it. And ours, you can see that we pledge it. You can see exactly what we pledged into there. So that's the difference between tokenization on chain in a programmatic way versus tokenization of the regular older way of doing it. So what Raleigh Road's doing and how they're doing it to comply with their rules and regulations and structure and status. We're doing it to try and compress time and streamline, increase the value of these specific digital assets over here on compliance. So anybody doing anything technically in the space, we try to encourage that, because if it works, then learn from it and grow from it and use it in your tool set to increase your own portfolio. We think that's a good thing.
Regarding the aftermarket that you mentioned, well, that's a pretty big deal. Before you don't want to get to, on some of those names you have Raleigh Road, well, I'll get to it now. What's the activity that you're getting on some of the names? Meaning, because the investors are waiting around for this to be sold at a multiple. So what do you do with the names with regards to outbound or trying to generate revenue? Tell us about what's happening there.
So, stepping back for 1 second, I think it's also really interesting for investors. Let's say you own a portfolio of these drops, mediocre names, you're buying them for $12 to a couple $100. There's zero liquidity, right? Like, so you want to get rid of those names, you're going to take it out if you're lucky, right? And so if you own shares of a super premium domain name, you have liquidity. You can sell your shares. Now, there's no guarantees about at what price, but you can sell some or all of your shares into the market at whatever price that market is trading at. And so I think it's an interesting way to introduce liquidity as an investor in a way that is not available if you are the sole owner of a portfolio of low to medium end names. In terms of liquidity, that's our number one priority, is trying to drive aftermarket liquidity. And we are actively trying to do that through a variety of different channels, proactively outbound brokering, promotion, trying to create value-added ways to engage the people who are investing into these domain names, to potentially expand, let's say, the visibility of names to potential buyers. There's a lot of different approaches, a lot of different things that can be done. And again, this is it's all early days, and as Chad said, I don't think there's one single right approach. We're gonna experiment with different things. We're gonna do a basket of things. Like, okay, so now you're an investor, you've got a basket of, let's say, 3letter.com, or a basket of cannabis-related names, or a basket of crypto-related names. And okay, so if the average investor were trying to buy these things, at 5-10 cents on the dollar, what we expect to sell at retail, and you sell one of those names at a 10x markup, well, now the other 9 names basically own at zero. And so it's all crazy, right? And so that's the idea. We're trying to figure out what works and what rivers demand. What does the market want? We don't know yet.
I immediately thought, as soon as I thought if I had shares and I didn't pick up any of the stuff and wait for this aftermarket, I can't wait till they're spring. I thought I was on the call and say, now I own some, unleash Chris on it.
Yeah, like Hotspot.com, for example, was trading down, 50 grand from whatever its IPO price was. And I saw that and I was like, oh man, I'm putting 4 on that thing. Anybody who wants to, bet his hand for their shares, I'm a liar, right? And so I think over time, there'll be more and more people that realize, like, oh, wait a minute, like, actually, oh, weakness is an opportunity. And, you know, then you get more and more people trying to make markets in these shares. And, you know, but it's early days, you gotta develop liquidity.
Is there demand from outside? Once you tokenize an asset, right, you can actually create your own liquidity in a Uniswap DeFi protocol. So if you buy a name for $1,000, you can put as much as you want into a DEX and have the liquidity there on the tokens once it's tokenized. So in theory, you
If
can
there's demand.
right, and so nobody wants to be the first one out because somebody says, "Oh, my demand's worth X."
Yeah.
Well, tell me, show me. No, tell me, show me, so I can actually go in there and create liquidity on that. So the tools are there to do that now on your own assets. If you want to back that up, and they're fairly easy to implement. Uniswap or SushiSwap and these other ones in there. I think that I've been using the metaphor of the Green Bay Packers for 5-6 years now, from an ownership economy strategy of each Green Bay ticket holder is technically a shareholder of the Green Bay Packers every seat, and they put these things in their wills, and so ticket season holders of the Green Bay Packers, they don't come up, they're not easy to get because they go in the wills. And so that kind of shows you the ownership mentality, that there is a demand for that fractionalization and that, but for domains that don't really have, you know, it's hard to get passionate about a domain though, so sure, like we all love our domains, right? That's why we spend $10 a year to renew them, and we might, because we have some kind of affection towards them. Selling that to somebody else that has the same affection is really kind of an uphill battle, so you're kind of like, unless you find the match. Now again, but it's, you know, with Contrib, what we try to do is turn those visitors that have that passion for fashion design and be able to give them the opportunity to be an owner in that asset and do that in an open, transparent way. Now, is there demand? You have to educate, and education is we're still on an education thing, let alone domains, and then let alone education and what you can do with the domain is way farther along what we were 5 years ago. And so it's exciting to see where we're going to be in the next 3 to 5 years and where the domains fit into that ownership, that utility, that asset class.
One of the concepts that I've been pitching to Rally and you know, sort of searching for the right company to you know, be our first guinea pig, is this idea of like, okay, you've got, you know, some kind of consumer product, service, whatever it is, you've got a, you know, sort of cult following, or you've got a really loyal audience base. Well, I think that there's an opportunity to almost create like an alternative, you know, alternative class of equity. Meaning, okay, instead of going out and raising VC money, why don't we take our domain name and we're going to fractionalize the domain name, take it public on Rally, and allow our audience, our customer base, to actually buy shares of our domain name, and then we're going to lease the domain name back and basically pay a dividend to our audience. And so it's an alternative way of capitalizing the business and giving that ownership, that participation to our customers. And that's going to increase loyalty, that's going to increase affinity, that's going to increase, you know, the stickiness of your brand. And now suddenly your customers, your audience, is going to feel like they are a part of it. And they're going to get rewarded for it because they're going to pay back a lease, which has all kinds of counter benefits. But you're going to, you know, basically pay them a dividend almost by leasing the domain back from the fractionalized ownership.
Yeah, that's the key component in everything you've built is people contribute, and of course you think they're going to take more of an interest. Like he was mentioning, we got 12 minutes, so we got to get to some good stuff now. I was going to say about the will, you know, leaving the ticket. I talk to these guys. Mike Sager always just say, I'm going to leave them to my kids. I'll leave these names to my kids. And we were talking about that earlier. Well, you know, domain investors believe the chart's like the Ibbotson chart for stocks. The 100 years just keeps going up. In another 40 years, I can't imagine these names must be worth 50 million each. But so I'm not one who thinks in 20 years, I'm not sure. I'm not as grounded as you guys. So do you guys plan on, you guys both have kids, and you talk about, you're going to leave your names to your kids? I mean, tell me.
I mean, I'm not sure I have a choice. It's like a 0% possibility I'm going to sell my name, you know, all my names, probably ever. That's certainly not in the next 20 years. But
it's mostly values, right?
But in terms of value, you know, look, 20 years is a long time. Okay, This industry literally basically started 20 years ago, right? 2004 was the first traffic conference, the first time that, a whole bunch of people in the domain business got together and were like, hey, you might have something here, right? And so, to look forward 20 years is unimaginable. But over the course of the next decade, I just don't see, and it's something, it's really the only thing keeping me up at night is thinking about where we're going, where we're heading. And I just don't see, on the balance of probabilities, I don't see anything that is going to stop the rise of domains. In fact, I see a whole lot of things that should give us even more tailwinds than we've already got. I think the trend is up. But again, my market is super premium domains. I don't mess around with small names. It's just not my market. I'm not an expert on it. I really don't have an expert opinion on it. But if you're talking about the best of the best, if you're talking about great, irreplaceable, one-of-one domain names, I don't see the value doing anything. In the short term, anything can happen, right? You get an economic, downturn, you get whatever. But over the broad macro trend over the next 10 years, I don't see anything that's going to stop the rise of domain values. And you're laughing about 50 million each. I think these things I think some of these things are worth that already. It's just that the market isn't aware of it. The market doesn't identify the value proposition yet. But there's this funny thing that happens the moment you take a domain. I'll be negotiating a domain, let's just say it's $1 million. And you got somebody on the other line, they're telling you you're crazy, why would I ever do that? I don't need that domain. I'm never going to pay $1 million for this domain. They got a million reasons. And then you end up making a transaction, regardless of the price, it doesn't matter. And you get the deal done, and then you call them up 48 hours later and you say, hey, listen, I've got another buyer. Larry told the story earlier. He sold home.com, or Andrew, a few months later, he's got somebody that wants to pay 25. I sold NFT.com for 2 point whatever million. A couple weeks later, I had somebody want to pay me 20 million.
That's a shack in Miami.
The moment something,
I mean, you see $40 million deals every day in a house. Like we get 1 or 2 $10 million plus assets in a year, right? When every single day it's this is supply demand. It's gonna be supply demand, but anything else is supply demand. Premiums will go. There's a certain amount of supply of premiums, and until the demand and that we're kind of talking about the value proposition goes into that equation, you're not going to see those $40-50 million deals like you see in Miami every day.
Yeah, those are houses, though. We're talking about the land, because you always said
but
the
there's
domain
people
you
that have
build
5
on
of those
the
houses, right? There's people that have that's one of one, right?
Yeah.
So from where the real money is at, right? They would never think about it's just because we're talking about the metaphor of real estate, virtual real estate, digital real estate, whatever. If that metaphor is still there, then we're still below.
Sure, but we're talking about, always thought the domains were the land and the website was the house.
The point I guess I wanted to make though is the moment I make this deal, I've been negotiating months with somebody, right? And then the deal closes, fine. 48 hours later, I'll call them up and I'll say, hey, so how much would you sell the domain for? And they laugh. They're like, I wouldn't sell it. I'm like, how much? Give me a number. I wouldn't sell it. They're like, you just bought it for $1 million. I'll give you $2 million. Would you sell it? Nah. What about 5? Oh, $5 million. Yeah, no. It's my brand. I can't sell it. It's my brand. You go, well, 48 hours ago, it wasn't your brand. I was trying to tell you it was your brand. And you were telling me, no, I don't need it. And then we did the deal, and now 48 hours later, you're telling me that for $5 million, 5x, I'll just bought it for you. You're not going to sell it? And I'm telling you, 98% of the time, you have a conversation with somebody you just sold a domain to, and you ask them, what would you sell this for? 48 hours later, they're negotiating with you, telling you they don't need it, they need a lower price, you can't justify it, they don't know, blah, blah, blah. And the moment that domain transfers to them, it is worth 10x, 100x, 500x. It is priceless. They are not going to sell you. It's off the market forever. It's not for sale anymore. And it's an emotional thing. Before that domain transferred to them, they didn't have the emotional connection. And the moment they got their hands on it, the moment their email address was now this nice, clean email address, the one that they dreamt about, the domain is no longer for sale. And if it is, it's infinitely more valuable. And that's the value of the domain. The value of the domain is not the price that I sold it for. The value of the domain is what would that person sell it now that they bought it? Because that's the actual end user value. That's the actual capitalized market value of that domain name, and I can tell you that it's 100x or 1,000x, whatever it is you sold it for. But again, price and value aren't the same thing. We have to be realistic and sell domains for the price that the market will bear. But when we're talking about the value of these names, the value is what will that end user sell it for once they bought it? And the answer in most cases is priceless, not for sale.
That's interesting, and that's where you anchor it. I mean, I was going to say that big price. Do you have any comments, Chad, on that?
Well, I mean, just like any other investments, then you evaluate the future potential earnings of the asset, right, to a certain extent, right? And so, where you don't do a good job of showing the potential, right? So, and it's really hard to put that vision into somebody else that doesn't see that potential, right? So, because that's how you make investments in startups and everything else, is what can this be worth in A, B, C, or whatever. And so I think that's, the market's catching up sometimes. Again, that's what we're kind of, the eCorp related on that earlier, of how but Isaac Tiger, founder of Hard Rock Cafe, House Blues, a thought is worth more than action. So, brokers usually probably lead with a thought. Hey, think what you can, it's what, kind of what we experience. It's not what it's worth, what is it worth to you, right? Not what it's worth to me. What could this be worth to you? If you can put that vision on the other buyers up and get them thinking, right? That's how you're gonna get them to act, right? Is that they get it and like, oh shit, okay, I can see that vision, and that usually takes some time and, multiple signals coming in through the emails or people talking about it. And, it takes a lot of time to make a decision, and it takes a lot of different forces to get that person the decisions. But once they make it, boom, then they go, and then you go execute on it.
I find the stick to be far more powerful than the carrot. Meaning the disincentive is generally like the threat of what could happen if they don't.
Beating them with the stick.
Yeah, is more effective than trying to incentivize them.
That's the offensive side. You can turn the asset now, that is a dormant asset, into an active, progressive asset that's hurting you more than helping. I'm on referrals.com, and we did the research on referrals. And it's not the 8 good referrals that you get, it's the 1 bad one that costs you more money to get a bad referral than it is to get 8 good referrals. Kind of the same thing. You can kind of spend like, well, imagine if somebody else has this asset, right, and you don't have it, and what is that going to cost you now as a thing? It's really hard to really portray that to a buyer, but that's really how statistically things kind of can work against you sometimes.
Yeah, before we finish up here, I want to say, you guys got to come at 3:35. Me and Nat are going to talk with these lawyers. I'm not sure which lawyers it is. Jason Shaver and Jeff Newman. But anyway, check us out in the monitor room. You got to see that. But so before we finish today, this has been a big year. I mean, this is a big year. And the MO team is just killing it. Well, you've had big years in the past. What's different about this year, and what trends are you seeing? But what is really happening with the sales these last 3 months? Hello.
Yeah, so we actually had a very slow first quarter of the year. It was fine, but it wasn't weren't ringing any bells. And then the last 3 months have just been bonkers. I think it's cyclical. It's like, there's always a trend. And right now the trend is AI, and there is a lot of companies emerging. And I know everybody's hot on the .ai, but I can tell you, we're selling a lot more .coms to these AI companies. So right now, the trend is crypto and AI. That's where we're selling it. Online gaming, it's basically crypto and AI. That's really the market. That's where you gotta look. Where's the company creation? Wherever there's company creation, that's where there's demand for domains.
I'd like to bring this up real quick, because I've been studying this stuff for a long time. It was forever to try to get people in crypto to domains. Fuck that, why would I do that? I'm in crypto, right? And then so for 5 years you beat down the door like, hey, why are domains important to crypto people? And now I started to see that kind of crypto people starting to see the value of domains, right? So you're starting to kind of see the reverse going back this way, and so you're starting to see really good blending of Web 1 assets with Web 2, with Web 3. So you're starting to kind of see that now migration of, you can build a Web 3 company, but go get a Web 1 asset because it has distribution, it has a lot of qualities in there. You wouldn't have gotten that 3-5 years ago in crypto people. And now you're seeing Pt2, and you're seeing these other ones using their big billion-dollar treasuries to go get establish their identity into the Web1 asset. So that's what I think is the hope is now we're starting to see the blending of tools in Web3 and the business models of Web3 with these other assets that were called domains.
At the end of the day, when you take away all the hype, it all comes down to one thing, and that is trust. And there is no better signal of trust on Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, and Web Infinity. It will always be the single best source of trust is a domain. If you have a domain name, there's still trust in your consumer, in your reader, in whoever your audience is, you win. Period.
Fantastic. You got 40 seconds left and we're not going to finish. We're done. Dennis wanted me to say that, but thanks everybody for being here.